All right. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Um, yeah, glad you made it. I think hopefully we're gonna have Peter and Reed on. We'll find out. I totally forgot we were supposed to be recording today. And then Reed messaged me and asked me if where are we doing the pod, what's going on with a capital Sir, SIR. He capitalized the sir in 2 text messages. Pod today, question mark, second text message, sir. And then I asked him if he wanted to host today. He said no. He's a real wizard, this Reed. He's a wily coyote. You can't catch this guy. You can't really ever know where he is, what he is, why he is. He's very, I don't even know if he listens to any of these shows at all, that even the ones he's in. But he's very he's like antimatter. Like if this is matter, if like what is what is, he shows up to be what's not, or he doesn't show up, or he says, I don't know, he is just the antithesis of whatever wants to be. That's kind of that's his vibe. Like if he's showing up, it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. Or at least that's how he expresses it himself with me, or that's how he seems to appear in my world. And that's something we could talk about till people get here is, what is my world? What's the difference between my world and the world? Is the world all the news of the day? Is it all the things I'm supposed to be paying attention to with our country or a country or different political systems or cultural climates or anything, religious institutions, social organizations? Would you say that's the world? And then my world is like whatever I'm currently experiencing, my thoughts, my feelings, what's in front of my eyes, what I'm currently seeing in front of my eyes, what I'm currently experiencing. These are the questions I ponder, and it makes me wonder. It's like, a lot of times I think, do I just have my head in the sand because I'm just not interested? Well, I find myself going on Twitter and I stay up on the news. I don't know why I do that, because I'm not interested in emotionally or mentally becoming involved with any of it. I guess I just like to see. I like to see the world, but I don't like to embody or take it upon myself. And I don't think the human brain is built to sustain the massive amount of troubles that could be seen, or the quote unquote problems presented through, the lens of media, whatever form that takes, whether it's somebody just sharing themselves on social media, or it's an organization presenting an article that says something else. I don't know. I like to stay out of the world. And I don't even, and now that I think about it, I'm not really interested in being in my world either. So where does that leave me? If I'm not interested in the world, and I'm really not interested in my world, which is whatever it is I'm placing upon experience or reality as it's unfolding, my thoughts about reality, my feelings, like these things these things are passing through. I'm not too interested in engaging with those as well. So where does that leave me? Where does that leave us? It leaves us with a podcast where I get to talk about what it's like to talk about being me, which I came to an interesting acceptance over the weekend. Somebody asked me, they said, "What is your podcast about?" And I haven't known how to describe it. And every time someone asks and Peter's around, I'll ask Peter to describe it. And anytime, I'll say, I don't know. And then I'll start to come up with things. that may or may not be what it's about. And my response this weekend was, it's about me. It's basically just about me. You know, whatever this is, whatever this character is, whatever this form is, it's about that. This perspective. It's about this perspective that the character of me grapples with, I guess. And I guess I use the podcast as a means to uncover or see things I wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Like just the process of sharing and having people come on the show and asking questions, and then listening to these things after they're published, listening back, it helps me see myself, and it helps me figure out if what I'm thinking is true or not. If or a lot of times it's just hearing something that makes me that is helpful. You know, a lot of things Peter says are helpful. Tons of things Peter says. Sometimes Peter can really get on one, but like a lot of times he says some helpful shit. Same with Reed. And I like watching. I guess it's, you know, it boils down to entertainment. I'm entertained by it. It's I guess it's just a tool, not a tool. I don't even want to call it a tool. It's like a plaything, something I can play with to create my own entertainment, to create but then it boils down to, you know, like, well, what is the podcast, right? It's me. I'm entertained by what it is I experience, and I'm entertained by what it is I share. It's been a wild week so far. Shared space is back on the forefront. We're running a test right now with about 10 people. People are sharing on it. Oh, I've been at this development game for years now, and you know, it's just, I don't even know what I want to say about it. I've been working a lot this week. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to say about it. I thought I was going to share a little bit about what it's been like. There's been anger, there's been frustration, there's just been angst, there's been why am I still doing this? Why is this still going on? You know, there's been, you know, my mind is trying to place place it on an object. And I was actually messaging Reed about that earlier today while I was occurring. We had oh, there he is. Holy shit, all I had to do was mention your name.
You think you have power over me, you son of a bitch? You summon me like a goddamn G8.
Wow. Yeah, so I was texting Reed earlier. I just did like a 10-minute monologue
On the Zoom?
Yeah, I just started talking once I opened it up.
Are you talking to anyone right now, or just into the void?
Into the into the void. Into the void.
Like when I joined, it was into the void?
Yeah, like when you joined, I had been talking into the void.
Nice.
How's it going? What are you doing?
I just did some work. A work meeting. Now I'm gonna go sit outside in the sun with y'all. You know, I don't know. The other week I wanted to quit work, and then I just applied like a little bit of effort, and I didn't hate my job anymore.
And you didn't hate it anymore?
Yeah. It's like I hate it when I'm not doing anything. And I know they know I'm not doing anything. And I feel like an imposter. And like I'm trying to hide from them and shit. But then I put in just like a couple hours of effort. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a fucking fantastic developer. I'm great at my job. I feel completely secure, and I don't hate it anymore.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you think that's interesting? Uh,
Then this kind of cycle happens where like I pull back because I want to focus on other things. And then because I'm not applying myself at work as much, I start feeling not so good about my performance. And then it's the same thing that happened in college. Uh, Forget a homework assignment. I don't want to show up to class because I know I don't have the assignment. And then I don't show up to class. Then I don't want to show up the next day because I missed the previous day of class and I didn't have the assignment. And so it's like I put myself in a position where I want to pull back from the thing. And in pulling back, it deepens the position that makes me want to pull back. That's
yeah.
probably a common phenomenon in most people's lives.
No, absolutely. It's yeah, it's like it makes me think like a lot of the things Peter says on the show, I think are worthy of attention. Like just the idea of intention, the idea of embodying character, like embodying like a moral, like a character code, you know, like being someone that does the work.
Yeah. Uh,
Because
I don't know.
I've been in that loop, dude. Like when I stop, when I fall off, like I just fall off. It's and you don't know why it's happening. But like you don't go to class.
I don't want to set myself up with the identity of someone who just does the work or whatever, the stand-up guy kind of stuff. Um, that's then I get in a position where I'm not living authentically, and then I've got to emulate a bunch of stuff that's just not true or not me. It's like going into a relationship. Like, what would a stand-up guy do? Well, then you're fucked because you're in a relationship with someone who thinks they're in a relationship with a stand-up guy. Now you're stuck being a stand-up guy for the rest of the relationship. And that's
All
if that's not you, that means that requires a constant effort to be slightly different, slightly better, slightly this, slightly that. I don't, I'm not going to be a good employee. I don't want them to think I'm a great, I am sometimes, but sometimes I'm not. And I want that freedom to be the employee who fucks up sometimes. I, I,
yeah.
I like the freedom of being the guy who's not dependable because then I
Yeah.
don't have this big ego thing about like, oh, I can't let him down. I gotta work extra hard this weekend or whatever to get the shit done. And be like, maybe sometimes I will, but sometimes be like, no, I'm not doing it.
The idea of who you are for the company can take over you.
Yeah, yeah. I forget what I am, or I forget who I am, and I think I'm employee X902, and this is the performance that employee produces.
And then your mind starts telling you you have to perform a certain way because you've allowed, or in some sense you've allowed yourself to be identified by whatever position you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes the same thing happens in other places. Like I come up with a goal for myself, but then I forget that I'm the one who chose that goal. And then all of a sudden that goal, oh, I'm supposed to be this way at work. It's not a self-chosen goal anymore. It's a requirement. It has to be done. I can't I can't mess up. Like it's got to be done at all costs.
And that limits your freedom.
Well, it creates this mental burden. It creates fear. Suddenly there's fear around it. It's like I don't know how good I'm trying to make up like an analogy or something. But it's like it's like choosing to play checkers with someone. But then no, I can't. I don't know. Not able to formulate it right now.
I know what you're saying. It's
Okay, it's like choosing to play checkers with someone, but then halfway into the game, you start believing if I can't get them to king me or whatever, that the world's going to end and I need to flip the board over. Like, I think we fall into that pretty easily. But at the beginning, I chose to engage in this activity because I thought it would be fun. Then midway through, I have to win. I can't lose. They can't take that piece. I have to take that piece.
so the idea is if you allow yourself to be a loser.
It's can you go into it and remain with it, resting perfectly in the acceptance that I can be a loser. That it's perfectly acceptable to lose. It's just as acceptable to lose as it is to win. In fact, it might be a more beneficial experience to lose than to win.
No, so acceptance of all outcomes.
Yeah, well, you know, it's beyond that. It's forgetting outcomes entirely. What the fuck do the outcomes have to do with me? I'm engaging in a game for fun. When did I decide how the game needs to end? That's fucking psychotic. I only have fun if I win. That's insane. What does winning have to do with playing the game at all? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
It's really an arbitrary condition. Like, we make up the idea of a winner and loser so that there's a game that can be played.
So, but wouldn't
But
you
it's
say that
not
the
about-
game, the game there's like a deeper level of liveliness when you know that you could win?
Yeah, there's a goal, but it's the idea that we buy into this goal knowing it's made up. But at some point, we forget we opted in to this game system and start taking it literally or seriously.
Yeah,
I'm
like it,
supposed to win. I have to win.
and it somehow denotes your worth, your existence even.
Yeah, that's even double psychotic. We start attaching an identity to how many games I've won.
Damn, yeah.
You could go into that one. It's like, I'll take pride in winning a game, yet I am not responsible for any of the circumstances that led to me winning that. Like, I didn't choose the brain I have. I didn't choose the skill I have. I didn't choose.
Dude, this happened on Guild Wars 2 to me yesterday. I played my first ever PvP match, player versus player. And it was so fun. It was so lively. And I really wanted to win, dude. And I was like on the squad with 4 other people and they were decked out. They had like all the hero armor and shit. And I was like, man, we're going to pwn, dude. It's going down. And we won. And I'm looking at my stats. How much damage did I do? How many kills did I get? Because I wanted to see my performance. But I knew that it was some, like, I felt like maybe that the software engineers code first time players in with epic players so they can feel what it's like to win. Because we won so hard, dude. Like, we crushed them. But I don't think it was because of anything I did.
Yeah.
But it was still a good feeling.
So it's fun to look at that kind of, yeah, it's fun to, well, so when it comes to, like, there's certain situations where it's fun to win and other situations where it's actually not. Like, when I play a game with my girlfriend, I don't feel good when I win because that means she lost. But, like, at some point a drive takes out, like, I'll play the game with her with the intention of we're just gonna have fun. You know, it's about just enjoying time together. At some point, this drive kicks in. Like, wait a minute. We're gonna, you know, we're having fun, but I still need to win. Like, I can't just let her win. And like that was more prominent like a few years ago. And it was very hard to like let that go. And then now I find like when I do win, it's not worth it. It's like, who cares? But when she wins, it's like, oh, I'm actually happier.
Are you limiting your play? Are you like going easier when you play games?
It depends. Sometimes, usually like, yeah.
What is it reasonable to say? And I'm just projecting my own experience that you could be just putting handicaps on yourself to make the game more enjoyable.
Yeah, sometimes I find that it's like not actually necessary for me to do that, but and like, yeah, there would be times when like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna let her win, but then like she starts winning, I'm like, wait, maybe I'm not gonna let her win.
Yeah. Huh.
Should we make a disclaimer to our dear listeners that we only do ayahuasca once every 2 weeks?
Oh shit, you're right. We could talk about that.
That's
Wow.
and
Yeah,
by that
we only do
yeah.
ayahuasca once every 2 weeks. We're not every day. Okay.
But on holiday months we do it. We'll do a series of every day for 2 weeks.
Intravenously. Ayahuasca. Yeah, we go hard on the ayahuasca for holidays, but generally speaking, throughout the year, it's only once every 2 weeks. Wow, I'd forgotten about that.
If you did that, would you just eventually turn into like, I'm thinking of the movie Altered States. You just become like some like primordial ooze. Like if you did it for every 2 weeks for years, would you just eventually merge with like
That's
nature
that's
itself?
what it was like after I had my waking up experience. I people's bodies, people talking to me, it felt like I just couldn't believe there was these amiable formatic pieces of flesh matter communicating words with their mouth. I couldn't, everything felt like ooze.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess similar to that.
But yeah, from what I understand, because I did that whole podcast with Markham, he's a shaman, like that's what he does. From what I understand, it basically opens up, it removes the mental framework that's preventing you from experiencing emotional states that you haven't addressed. So if you have any trauma in your past, any grief, any of that stuff, that's going to come up and you're going to face it.
Well, I feel like that's similar. That's common for most psychedelics I've tried. Is
Yeah.
basically
It's like a cleansing process. You see the pain to be absolved of the pain in some sense, but it's a trip.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's sweating, there's sometimes there's puking. It doesn't sound like a good time. It honestly doesn't sound like a good time. Shit, after I did the show with Markham, I think I might have told you about this.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. I was sick that whole night for no reason. And I had the same symptoms he was describing of someone who goes on an ayahuasca trip. And then the next day I woke up and everything was potent, like after a mushroom trip, and like I felt elevated and like unburdened.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is it possible to well, okay. So it's kind of been my experience that like I've been seeing more and more that all of these states we experienced on substances were not due to the substances, but these are states inherent in ourselves, and there are many ways to access these places, and you don't. And I guess the real shaman is the one who can freely access these places without any external tool necessary. And that's what we're doing. That I am the only tool I need to explore these places.
The problem is I don't get to decide when or if they occur.
Yeah. But that's also kind of similar to substances too. Like I don't get to decide what shakes out, I don't get to decide how. Sometimes it'll do nothing, and I've had times when, I had some kind of emotional release or whatever, and there are times when it's just nothing, like smoking a cigarette. I don't know what it's gonna do. Sometimes it does nothing. Sometimes it's a really interesting experience. Like, for clarification, no, I think it's pretty ambiguous whether or not we actually use these substances we're talking about currently. I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah, I knew that's what you were thinking.
Not clear.
You were like, am I gonna let them know the facts, or are we just gonna let people decide the facts? Which is funny. We could tell them the facts and they would decide the facts anyway. That's hey, my favorite pieces of art, my favorite films. You leave the theater and you've got way more questions than answers. And you've actually got another movie to explore. It's like you watch the film, you're there, or you listen to the show, and then you've got to talk about it.
So I guess the question we'll pose to listeners is, in not knowing, why does that?
Which of us is more likely to be total head cases on ayahuasca?
Why does having a positive or negative answer to that question, whether or not like we're using substances, why does that affect how you hear what we say? Why does that affect the perception of what we're talking about?
I want to answer that question. That's a good question. Knowing whether the person I'm listening to has used substances or not affect my relationship to the information being shared.
Yeah, and why? What does that say?
Yeah, what does that say?
What is that suggesting about the beliefs I have?
Yes. What is it suggesting about the beliefs I have? The beliefs you have? Is it wrong to do drugs?
Only within the the framework we carry around about it. And that depends too. But no, there's no wrong. It's not the right word. What do we mean by wrong?
Yeah, that's the thing. What do you mean by wrong? Why would it be wrong? What is wrong about it? Is it because of something someone has said, or is it because of something someone?
The wrongness is this whole kind of like guilt-based almost framework that's added in. Like that got hammered into me through AA and all that stuff. And my parents' treatment centers, all the stuff, all the people my whole life telling me I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. That's where that came from. Well, practically, it was fucking my life up. But the idea that it's wrong or not is added. And then that adds this whole layer of suffering that's not necessary.
Yeah, I got lucky. I got lucky because I didn't really have that framework. So it was all exploratory for me.
It was exploratory for me for a long time, but there was also that framework present. And I
Yeah,
tell you,
there's
the best times I had were times when that framework wasn't present. I was like, this is what I'm doing right now, you know?
yeah.
And I'd be okay with the kind of the darkness in which I'm in without making it something I have to get away from, have to change.
Mm,
There's freedom in that.
there is. Would you say that's what you're interested in? Like that's I'm curious about the Holger group. No, I'm not. I'm
Is
not.
what I'm interested in.
What?
He said, is that what I'm interested in?
Well, I was thinking about just freedom, like your ability to move, your ability to move where you feel called to without any secondary voice in your head or framework that says it's like no, like just the ability to be free. Because we were texting about what is it, the worst what was it you said about police that we agreed on?
Um, police, cops are the most frightening thing that I actually encounter in life. You know, we can have all these fears and stuff, but the fears that actually manifest, like police are scary because attached to it, there's this whole framework of getting in trouble. There's this idea that we're not supposed to get in trouble, and cops can, and with cops, it's like, I'm getting in trouble. There's this framework attached to it. Like there's an absolute wrong somehow, and I don't want to.
So the story that we have associated with police officers and law enforcement is they're there to if you're causing trouble, they're there to they're there you'll get in trouble, like they'll get you in trouble. They're not there, like it's not like they're peacekeepers, quote unquote. That's not the framework. The framework is if they're around, I could get in trouble.
Well, it's not the police specifically, but it's just the idea of getting in trouble. That there is some kind of absolute wrong that I could engage in. And the idea of if you engage in that wrong, then it's really, really bad. It can't happen. You know, it's not supposed to happen. We can't let it happen. Like there's just this nebulous.
And that's the fear that you experience.
Well, that's the framework that's brought up. Um, that's why it's so. There's this feeling of like. And it brings up like a feeling of, you know, guilt. I don't know. I can't.
So my grandfather was a police officer for like 30 years, and he used to be Elvis's bodyguard back in the day. And I have this framework, I've had it since I was a kid, where like they're all my grandpa, like they're all this, very strong, sincere, charismatically loving people. I just kind of assume that they're honor is how I associate police officers. That's been my framework. And then I get arrested, right? And the fear for me now is like it's the only, because I agree with you, like I'm not afraid of tigers, I'm not afraid of bears, I'm not afraid of rogue missionaries with machine guns. We're not in some politically there's no strife, like conflict occurring in our area, but they're the only object that can totally strip away my freedom, and there's nothing I can do about it.
But even then, they can't though. They can't. They don't have. Nothing has the power to fundamentally change my experience of myself in the world. Like they can't actually strip away anything.
They
They can
can
change. They can change my material circumstances. They can't touch me.
huh
But see,
Interesting.
that's why they're threatening, is because the framework I have of things need to be a certain way and I need to have certain things, they can threaten that.
Right.
But I think it's entirely reasonable to suggest that there is someone without such a framework could be totally content being arrested and thrown in jail for the rest of their life and have their state of being not change one iota.
Yeah, it's reasonable. Yeah. Yeah. I remember last year when I got arrested, and I remember thinking, as they said, put your hands behind your back and put the cuffs on me. I remember thinking, this is an interesting adventure. I can't believe
Yeah.
this is happening right now. I couldn't believe it.
Uh-huh.
Then I ended up in the cell, and it was just so loud, like just the metal, just metal and concrete for some reason, and was really loud. And there's no one in the cell with me. It felt mechanical. I was like, I'm in a mechanical domain now. I'm not in the world of nature. Man-made is what it felt like. Absolute
Uh-huh.
man-made environment. And it was miserable. Yet I saw that and was like, why is it miserable? This is an opportunity.
Right.
But yeah, that's why I think I'm on board with what you're saying, is like, especially now leaving this conversation, there's nothing to really fear because I'm creating it. I'm creating the fear, or it's being created. It's not real.
So if I were to become okay with the conditions of jail, um, hasn't it actually given me a greater level of freedom? Because I no longer have to control my life, my living quarters, my basic needs are taken care of.
Which is what
So,
you're already experiencing.
right. Doesn't it actually make things simpler? Shouldn't I be able to go to a deeper level with myself without having to worry about securing anything?
Have you heard the story of Damien Eccles, the West
Mm-mm.
Memphis Three?
Mm-mm.
These kids got arrested and they got put into life imprisonment because they were claimed to be Satanists practicing devil worshiping, and they murdered a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was falsified. They were just
Right.
goth kids living in Arkansas. But the town and all the people in it decided that they were the problem, and they put them away for their lives.
Uh-huh.
And Damien went into that cell and he did exactly what you just described. He started practicing magic and he attained deep levels of enlightenment.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I mean, he got out after 18 years. They proved that all the evidence was falsified and all the shit, it was all bullshit. And now he's sharing his message. He's sharing how he was able to truly enjoy his experience and realize deeper levels of truth. Just him in a book, in a cell, solitude, 23 hours
Mm-hmm.
a day.
Isn't that kind of, isn't that what we're working towards anyway? The ability to be able to do that materially with our job, with everything.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is like this is the I guess the frustrating part is that it can't be done in any way that I've seen outside of me. Do you know what I'm saying?
What do you mean?
Like that is, I would agree with you. Like that's what I'm hoping to, that's what I'm interested in realizing, interested in experiencing, is that way of being, of just presence and contentment in the flow of life, regardless of circumstances. But there's nowhere I can go to do it, and there's nothing that I can change in my life to cultivate that.
I think there are circumstances that make it easier to focus on such a way of being and cultivation. Like the less material pursuits I'm distracted by, suggests the more time I have to focus on this cultivation.
I agree with that. It's a game of seeing. It's a game of seeing where my energy is being, or the attachment is a strong word, but like, where am I focused, and what in my life matters to me that isn't what we're currently talking about, which isn't truth. What is it in this? Like, does it matter I'm in a cell? Does it matter that I'm in a house? Does it matter that I have clothes or don't have clothes, or have food or don't have food? Those things matter. But is there anything distracting me from the pursuit of, I guess, if I had to put a word to it, I don't actually know what that word would be.
Again, I think, the circumstances may make it easier for me to have such a pursuit, but can't.
But that's the thing. Your circumstances have been created for your domain, and it's what you've got to work with to get wherever it is or to realize whatever it is you're hoping to realize. Like Damien, it's a weird thing, because like a lot of people get thrown in jail and don't have the experience that Eccles had. It's like he made something of his experience. Whatever it was that is him made something of that experience. And each one of us has the opportunity to do that.
Right. Like that's true for everyone everywhere. Like
Everywhere.
most people are thrown into life, and then occasionally people meet the circumstances of their life and find something deeper.
The problem is when I start to think I have to go to a cell or an ashram or a mountain all by myself to get there. I think it takes full acceptance of where you actually are. And I don't think that can be created. I think it can occur. I got to be able to see what's real, or what actually is.
That's the first step, third step paradox. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I guess in AA terminology, like a genuine experience, 1 and 3 aren't created. I don't choose to just see things clearly suddenly, but seeing things clearly, sometimes suddenly, is required to go deeper into this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, in order to be peaceful, I have to it's like to walk through the door must of itself appear in front of me, and the desire to walk through it must also appear.
Yeah. So there's nothing to do.
Yeah. I mean, it always comes back to that. Like, you hash it out long enough, like there's nothing you can do.
So I've been listening to Peterson this week, JP, and not the Morgan.
Uh-huh.
And I love some of his line of thought. He talks about being honest. He talks about telling the truth and acclimating yourself to the highest aim. Like, if you're given an opportunity to exist on this planet, in this body, whatever body you're in, and having whatever life you're having, what is it you're aiming at? What's your goal? You could say car, you could say house, you could say career. What's your highest possible goal? And he speaks from like the religious perspective at times, because he's heavy into the Bible. So a lot of people will say, God, my highest aim is to be that, right? But he said, you can change that word to truth. You can change it to courage. You can change it to love. What is your highest aim? And then be that.
Well, okay, the trick there is also to recognize that the highest aim, your goal, is not actually your goal. It's just your goal is what you think that thing will get you. If you say your goal is God or union with God, that's because you think union with God will bring you something. It's that you think that will bring you some kind of peace, equanimity. So that's actually the goal. Like the car, my goal is not the car. My goal is the sense of whatever I think the car is going to give me, like maybe happiness or fulfillment. So my goal is fulfillment. And if I see that my goal is fulfillment, then I don't have to waste my time with all these arbitrary objects I think will get me that. I can see immediately that it's not about the object I'm pursuing. If my goal is fulfillment, I can have that immediately now.
So then the question I'm having is, then what is it that you do then? What are you aiming at?
The aim reveals itself to be simply a desire to see things as they are, to see myself as I am. And in that, everything solves itself.
That's why, dude, I'm just going to be that's why I think you're like a Zen artist. Because I think that's Zen. I think there is no goal. They're just existing in a way of Zen. If you had to put words to it.
The goal is the veil. The goal is a misunderstanding of what I'm actually looking for.
Yes.
But you're talking about like, what can we do? Like, is to like be truthful or whatever. That's so like, we talked about there's nothing you can do, but if there is one thing you could do, it's seeing things as they are. Like, don't being honest with what you're actually looking for and finding out what it is you think that goal will bring you, and then being honest with yourself where I am right now. What am I actually doing? Like, without these frameworks and fancy words. And then if I can start from here now as I am, we can get somewhere. But if I'm working towards a goal, I'm trying to affect change from the future.
You're meddling in the affairs of the ethereal.
Like I can't, I can't dunk a basketball from halfway up to the goal. I have to do it with my feet on the ground here.
Yeah. And so one of the, I guess, and welcome, I think one of the things that the master does is they allow you to see where you're creating narratives and rationalizations. So a question can be posed. Why are you doing this? And you say, oh, well, because I want to do this and this and this. It's like, why do you want to do that, and that? So you just get rid of all the stories we're telling ourselves about why we're behaving.
Yeah. 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 Get down, find out what it is I'm actually looking for. I guess that's it. Like, just, and that's honesty. If I say I'm trying to get a car, a girlfriend, even happiness, What is it I think that will give me? Say I'm looking for peace. What is it that I think peace will give me?
And you follow the thread.
No, the thread unwinds itself. And then I'm already here.
I mean, that's what they all say. And that's kind of what we were alluding to. Pete, thanks for joining us. It's kind of what we alluded to about the psychedelic state. It's like the object actually facilitates the chemicals that are already existing within us.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like the car is going to make me happy. I'm seeking happiness. If the happiness is within you, that means it's here.
Yeah.
How can I experience it? How do I get to see it? And in my experience, and I'd love Pete to chime in, is I've got to get out of the way. My thoughts, my ideas, my feelings, right? I've got to see things for what they are.
And the best way to get out of the way is to honestly face myself as I am now without the stories. It's not me that's got to get out of the way. It's the stories about me.
Well, what is me?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can't give that away. You gotta, anything we say is a story. Like, you gotta find out now directly. And that's an answer that is only in the questioner. Like, there's not an external source for that answer. Including a story or anything I could find out. Like,
and I could spit a bunch of words, but it would just be poetry. Pete, what say you?
So what's the underlying topic?
honesty.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Honesty as maybe honesty as the path. And that's,
Yeah.
you know, just for now, that's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so seeing, right? So seeing myself as I am, where I am. Like, and actually looking at that, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's, and that's a lot different. So it's also kind of tricky because the stories run deep. Seeing myself as I am also isn't necessarily just, you know, writing an inventory of what I'm doing right.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't necessarily reveal it. It's going below all that I could say about myself. Because everything's an abstraction. You know, the goal, the desire, the feelings, they're layers built on top of something else. What's at the bottom layer? You know, that's truth, the base truth.
Yeah.
It's distorted when I put it into words and frameworks and.
Well, so that's the biggest shift. That in itself is the biggest shift, is that when I can start to recognize it as a story. Like, actually look at all of that. Rather than focus on your story or its story, or right, like that's a major like paradigm shift that has to take place. Because I won't think it's a story. I won't think it's a story.
I saw you doing that yesterday. The great example was what happened yesterday at the group. You remember what you shared with me in the car?
Not
I remember.
specifically.
I'll share it. You said a lot of times when you're in groups, you're actually meditating, you're watching your mind judge.
Yeah. I'll recognize that. I recognize it all the time, especially in a meeting, or, like, this person's that person's this, like, I wish they'd be different, all that stuff. But what I'm saying is that I finally started recognizing that was what was taking place within me, that was how, like, I could look at that. I could look at what I was doing, like how I was taking external things in, right? And in the past, that sort of stuff would just keep layering itself and layering itself and layering itself and layering itself until I became completely disinterested and even going to that type of situation, like, right, like even being in a meeting, it would remove me from, I wouldn't be able to actually go. I'd be so delusional about what was really going on that I wouldn't be interested in going.
Right.
So it's like, fuck this. It's just this, it's just that. It's just these people doing this.
So
Blah, 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 blah.
reasons on reasons on reasons,
Right.
and then no reason to go anywhere.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, like, that'll build up to a place where I'll be sitting there, like, recognizing that meeting was available at that time, but I'd be like, fuck that, I'm not going to that.
Yeah. And it's for a reason. It was built on top of. So at first, yeah, a thought pops up, a judgment, and then I just casually accept it. And then
Yep.
based on that thought that I've taken to be true, I'll have more thoughts on top of that. And then based on those thoughts, I'll start having behaviors and actions. And so it's this random arbitrary thought that pops up.
Yeah.
And I just accept it. And then I've started building this tower. And then I get to a place, where I'm like, I've been watching this week in particular, I've been seeing those starter ideas. The idea, just a judgment about something pops up. And then I realized, wait a second, I was about to just accept that as true and then base further thoughts on that.
So that's, I think we were getting at this when it comes to honesty. I guess what we're talking about is I think I was doing it in the intro, but like truth, like discernment. Like the reason I think I do this show is because I'm interested in discerning the true from the false. And I have to hear myself speak to do that. And I have to hear what other people say and see. I have to know what you're seeing, Reed, and what you're seeing, Pete, that I can't see. So I can somehow discern truth, the true from the false.
Yeah. So, like, for an example, right? Like, everybody here, Reed, Adam, me, like, we've all been in a position to, quote unquote, be helpful to somebody that might want to experience what we experience, right? Like,
well, wait, Pete, because I was trying to tie in this to what Reed was saying, because there's a level of when you're seeing it, the thought, and you're going to accept it as true. And then your mind goes, wait a second, am I about to accept this as true? Am I judging this or am I not judging it? How do I feel about this information, whatever it may be? That is discernment. And that's what you were referring to, Pete, last episode about. I think that's how one creates their own philosophy, through that pursuit. What is it that I'm experiencing and seeing and receiving? I'm digesting it. I'm listening. I'm digesting it. I'm having thoughts about it. How do I discern? And that's
Right.
where philosophy is created.
Right. Well, and what I was getting at is that, like, one of the things I will say to someone that is like, in a way, I think it's sort of ludicrous, but I understand it. Where like somebody will say, "Hey, would you do this work with me?" Or like, "Would you?" Okay, great. And you and I kind of talked about this on the car ride over there, right, yesterday. And
Yes.
right, like this, and it's like, well, okay. So then all of a sudden, I'm engaging with another person. Like I'm engaging in that opportunity.
Someone's asked you for help.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So and for me, like in that situation, like I have certain conditions that the other person must meet or must comply to in order for me to be willing to provide to go through with that, to set up the first appointment, right?
Let me tell Reed what we're talking about so he knows. Reed, so somebody asked me to sponsor them the other day. And when I met with him, he told me he wasn't really interested in AA. He's going to the groups. He doesn't feel comfortable sharing. He doesn't connect with it. He is interested in Dharma recovery. I've never done Dharma recovery. And I've read through it. I've looked into it. When I've met with him, we met for an hour, heard his story, shared a bit of mine. And I said, let's do this. We can do one of two things. We can go through the book, the AA book, or we can go through the Dharma recovery book. Your choice. I'm open to either.
Yeah.
So and I asked Pete what he thought about that. That's what Pete's referring to.
Yeah. And I shared my idea about that. But then the thing that I'll always make clear is if the conditions for that person to work with me, like to come to me, if they're willing to meet those conditions, then I'm willing to set the first appointment and do the work, like go through it, right? Like one appointment at a time. However, the thing that I make very, very clear, not necessarily with like super new people, but like with people maybe that have been doing the dance for a while, like trying to catch this thing or whatever, right? Like I'll say to them, look, I will share with you everything that like I've experienced to the best of my ability, but it's up to you to chop this up for yourself. Like you are a sponge and it's your obligation or it's your duty to make sense of the sponge for yourself. Like whatever sticks. It's like it's an individual experience for yourself, like for you in your life.
And you raised a good point yesterday. You said, have you ever done Dharma recovery? So how am I expected to help someone through Dharma recovery if I've never actually done Dharma recovery?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't matter. Like if you have a genuine experience, it's not that you've memorized the book and memorized what your sponsor told you.
No.
You've had an experience with a spiritual path. It shouldn't matter what fucking book you pick up. You could pick up any book and walk someone through it.
Even if I've never read it.
You don't, what is it going to say that you don't know?
No, well, this is my point.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Go through it with him. Walk through it together with him. Like that sounds like a. But
so in that situation, for me, I wouldn't do it. Like I personally wouldn't feel comfortable going into that, and maybe that's a closed-minded perception that I have. But I would say, look, like that's great. Like that sounds really cool. But this is what I do. Like this is what I've done and this is what I do. And I know from my experience of walking through this specific recipe, like what can occur, what has occurred in my life and how I live today. Right. If I was interested in doing the Dharma thing, I would go and seek out somebody that has that lives that way and ask them like, hey, I'm curious about this. I'd like to go through it, because personally for me, I want to be around somebody that's had a genuine experience with whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah, but you are that person. You've already
Oh,
had a genuine experience.
I know, but the mechanism is different. Like, I don't have experience with that mechanism.
Yeah, but it's not the mechanism you're trying to teach someone.
Well, yes
You
and
don't
no.
The mechanism is a means to have a real experience. It doesn't, matter what. I mean,
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I just am saying for myself that I wouldn't feel comfortable having no experience with something and walking through it with somebody that is telling me what to do. Like, that person's coming to me asking me to do, like, to be a part of their life. And what I'm saying is that in that situation, you don't get to, like, come up with the options.
If you're existing in a hierarchy, an authoritative hierarchy, where there's a teacher and a pupil.
Yeah,
But
because it's a
if you're
game.
just another bozo on the bus, there shouldn't be any mentor protege thing. It should be a symbiotic relationship.
No, I understand what you're saying, but that's part of the individual philosophy. That's what I'm like. That's like, that has to be owned. Like, I have to be in ownership of of how I'm operating. Right? Like, you might be
Yeah.
completely comfortable with that set of circumstances. Like, and that's totally cool. Like, that doesn't, I don't have any, thumbs up or thumbs down with that. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying, for my own structure, for how I operate in the world, like, that wouldn't be something that I would be willing to do. But that's for me. That's for me. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but what I am saying is that I can go to sleep at night knowing that I'm aware of that, and I've seen that, I saw it, and I looked at it and was like, okay, this isn't something I'm willing to do for me.
But it makes me wonder, and I feel I don't want to. It makes me wonder, because somebody who has a problem with cocaine, okay,
Right. Okay.
and says, Pete, I hear what you say. I'm listening. I'm into it. Can you help me?
Right. Right. I'd have a conversation with them. Yeah.
You'd have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd invite them to have a conversation. Like, hey, yeah, I'm willing. Like, let's have a chat. I'd like to know more about you. I'd like to hear your story. I'd like to learn about your experiences, and, like, let's meet for coffee and have a chat.
And that's what I'm curious, because, like, we were talking about this yesterday, is like the deflation moment to me is really the only prerequisite. It doesn't matter whatever it was that brought them to that total self deflation, or the breaking point of, like, I don't got it anymore.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I still don't understand that, by the way. Like, I don't know how that happens.
Me either.
That's what, if we could do anything helpful, it's to help someone cultivate that experience and go deeper.
Right.
That's it. That's all
I
we're
agree.
trying to do. I'm not trying
I agree
to
with that.
help someone stop drinking, stop taking drugs. Like,
Yeah.
it could be anyone with any problem. Like, there's no.
It can, hey, my girlfriend dumped me. I don't want to live anymore.
Yeah, it
I'll
doesn't
do
matter.
anything.
It could literally
Yeah.
be anyone on earth with any problem.
Yes.
The experience we've had, I don't know. I think the experience I have is, no, I can't say that. Like, the problem is secondary.
Well,
It's like you said.
but this is why this is interesting to me, is because, like, if I'm using the AA book, someone comes to me that has been, the world has surrendered them. They have entered the breaking point. They know they don't have any answers, and they're willing to listen to someone who seems to carry themselves well. Please guide me. Tell me what I can do. I know I'm fucked. Doesn't matter why they got fucked. They just know they're fucked.
Right.
And the only text I can refer to is a book about alcoholism. For me, that's a problem. Like, I want to be able to be helpful to anybody.
Why do I need a text?
Well, I don't think
Why
we
not?
do. I don't think
I
we
know how to
do.
live.
I don't think-
I know how to live.
yeah. That's a good point.
I don't
Now,
live based on a
now,
book.
now you do.
But someone doesn't have to walk through the same process that I did to get where they have to walk through the process they need to walk through to get where they are.
Right. And what I'm saying is that I have my experience with all of like what it was for me. And I'm happy to share that with someone, but it goes back to the individual experience. Like that has to be someone that has to be there. It's coming from them. There's nothing that I can do to pass on that willingness or that thirst to do something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's all I'm saying.
And
That's all I'm saying.
but you're also saying this is what you're also saying that this is what I know, and this is where I can help you.
No, these are my experiences as a result of what I've done.
Right.
This is what it was for me. This is what I did. This is what happened to me. This is how I felt. This is what I experienced. Right. Like, and I can share that with someone else. Right. And that person might come back to me and say, you know what, like, I still want to do the Dharma thing, or I still want to do this, or I want to do that. And my answer to them is, for myself, is like, that's fantastic. And I urge you to follow to follow whatever it is. However, for me, I'm not able to do that.
Got it.
I won't be doing that with you.
Right. Because
Right?
you know where your playing field is.
For me.
You. Yeah.
And that playing field has changed, right? Like, and Reed brought up a really interesting point. So like, I don't need the text anymore. Like, I don't need the book. Like, it's not about the book, or it's not about the specific nature of the path anymore, right? Like, I've been living a certain way for a good while now, and like what that's done for me is it's opened up everything, right? Like, I would be curious about looking at the Dharma recovery, but I would look for somebody, or like make a phone call or send an email to somebody that's done that, right? And been like, hey, I'd like to experience this. Would you be open to taking me through this work?
Well, I've already experienced it though. I've already experienced it.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is I haven't experienced the mechanism or the material things in relationship to that.
No,
Right?
you know that's bullshit. There's the change the material mechanism, and then you're gonna get what? You're gonna get you right now.
No. I know that 100%. I know that 100%, but
It's like a
that's
different
also,
recipe to get the same cake. Like you.
no, I know, but that's what I'm saying is that's also why it's not necessary for me to seek someone out that is a Dharma recovery guru. Like, I don't foresee myself actually doing the Dharma recovery guru thing, right? Like, I'm impartial to it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But for somebody that hasn't had that experience, right? Like, they're still trying to navigate, they're still looking for a mechanism, knowing that not knowing there's no mechanism.
There's a stage in which the tools and mechanisms are extremely beneficial.
Yeah, 100%. But what happens is as I go through it, as I go through as I go up the ladder, or I start taking these things, right? Like, I go through it, and at a certain point during that process, I'm like, well, there's no fucking ladder.
And everything's available.
Right. Then I can start looking at myself, and I can start looking at my thoughts and my ideas, and like what controls me and what dominates me and what doesn't. And like, right. Like, I start to create my own philosophy for myself, rather than having that philosophy dictated to me by someone else, rather than having that philosophy dictated to me by the news, or a certain book, or a family member, or whatever, right? Like, I start to go through this elimination process of how I'm operating in the world. And I think that's fascinating. I think that's cool. I mean, even to this day, I still have so many things that dominate me that I can't see. I can't really see them.
I had one earlier, and I wouldn't have seen it without what Reed and I were talking about.
And I
Yeah.
think that's honesty though.
That is, I mean, that's,
I think that's,
well,
I
that's,
think that's, there's a level of honesty there where like, I'm like, oh, wow, like this fucking idea in relationship to women still dominates you, or politics, or like money, or like all these different areas of the game. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah, that, I mean, that's what, I think that's what I'm interested in, is seeing these things so I can move through and beyond them.
For myself, for
For
myself.
myself, yeah.
And yeah, and then there's the other side of it where it's like, okay, that's cool. Like, I'm just gonna flow, man. I'm just gonna flow. I'm just like, whatever. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. I'm not interested. Like, great, that's great. But like that can't be because I said that's what you should do. That's got to be something that you've chopped, like a person's chopped up for themselves and been like, you know what? I'm gonna run this. Like, I'm gonna live this way. Like, that's the ownership piece. That's the authenticity piece, right? Like, and it's neither here nor there. It just, in my belief, it has to come from the individual. It can't be a societal narrative that's plugged into someone, right? Like, I don't think a person can be like experience any sort of peace there, or like, it's not even peace. It's like any sort of authenticity, you know, like authenticity and experience. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I was, I guess I was talking about it at the intro of the show. I mean, I discerning, distinguishing, recognizing the difference between the world and my world, and realizing that I'm not really interested in either.
Right. Okay.
Yet I find myself like paying attention to news and making this podcast so I can see things that I wouldn't normally see, So I don't know why any of this is the way it is.
Right.
The reasons I come up with for what I'm doing are after the fact. They're just kind of, I come up with reasons to say I'm doing this because X, I'm doing this because Y. Just the mind automatically does that in order to feel like it's in control.
Mm-hmm.
The desire and the action arose on its own before the thought, this is why I'm doing this. And I try not to take credit or try to explain what's happening, because it's just a story I've added afterwards. I think, anything I seem to be doing is just something else is running the show, and I get the front row seat to witness what this particular organism, what part this body mind plays in this whole show. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm not the one creating. It's like, being the paintbrush rather than the artist.
Mm-hmm. Right. But see, that goes to my point though. It's like that for you is what, like, that's ownership. Like, you've chopped this stuff up. Like, you've chopped up a bunch of stuff to come to these places where you can recognize like how you're moving, like what like your organism in whatever this is.
You've chopped it up enough to see that you're being moved.
Well, it's like you chop it up enough so that you chop it up fine enough so that it just it's not blocking your view anymore.
Right. But you did that individually. There wasn't anybody cramming anything down your throat or saying like, this is what you need to do, or this is what you have to do, or this is what you need to be. Like, you individually have done that. Like, Adam's done it. I've done it. Like,
I don't take credit for that. I never conjured
Well,
up this
okay.
desire to see things that way. You know?
Regardless of its source, the information was going in somehow. Like the actions or the activities that took place to read a different book, or to listen to a different speaker, or to like sit in meditation and have these, like, go through that process, like whatever that is, right? Like that took place for you, that took place for me, that took place for Adam, like that takes place for anybody that's in ownership of their life. Like,
I don't think I can say why it takes place, because the taking ownership of your life is a result of that process. Like,
I
it's
don't know
circular.
either. I don't know either. But what I'm saying is that it does happen. Like it does take place in some, like, somehow. Like I don't even, like, I have no understanding, like, why I'm in, like, why I even why I have a morning routine and an evening routine. Like, I just do it. Like,
Right.
I literally just do it. Like,
So
I
I
sit.
take no credit for these practices. They pop
Yeah.
up on their own.
Yeah. And
The
I don't
less
even know
I
why I'm
do,
interested in it.
yeah.
Well, I would say, now that I would say it's because we've grappled with our lives.
Yes, that's my point. That's my point.
I mean, still, that implies to me too much ownership and credit to say I grappled with my life.
Well, that's the turning point, is like,
Someone
once,
dropped into a whirlpool is gonna try
I
to swim
know,
to the shore. Maybe they get there, maybe they don't.
but that's what's interesting, is like, I grappled, the turning point was when I stopped grappling with my life. That was the turning point. My whole life I was grappling with it. When I stopped,
Right. Right. But that had to happen.
right, we don't know
Right.
how or why.
That had to happen.
We come back to this fucking, like, the only thing we can do is wait for the door to appear on its own and wait for the desire to walk through the door to also appear
And
at the same time.
smoke cigs, do ayahuasca, and pwn noobs, dude.
Yeah. Exactly. And then it, right, and then it goes from there. There was a really interesting podcast, and I was telling Adam about this yesterday, but Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, like, have a 2-hour discussion. And Sam Harris is a really interesting guy, and I think Jordan Peterson is really interesting. But Sam Harris is coming from this place of both sort of academic philosophy, but twisted in with, like, heavy Eastern exposure. So, like, masters of meditation, and, like, he's done a lot of interesting things. And then Jordan Peterson is, very clinical, right? He's a very clinical, the way he communicates,
Western Jungian,
very clinical, but
theoretical psychoanalysis.
he touches in a bit of philosophy, and he talks about spirituality a little bit, right? But, like, so there's two people, and each one of those people has clearly has their own philosophy. Like, they're very, very comfortable with themselves. Sam's over here, Jordan's over here. Does it matter where it came from? I don't think it does. But what I'm saying is like, both of those people are operating in the world, which seems to be in a very neutral, comfortable place. And they see it completely differently. Like, but what I'm saying is that they've clearly looked at it for themselves. However that happens. Right? Like, that to me is, it's fascinating, right? Like, there's very little discomfort there. Sam,
Would you
go ahead.
would you say they see it differently, or just describe it differently?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think, like, I don't really know. Like, they'll use different words, but, like, you can almost see it taking place. Like, when they're communicating, you can almost see their own individual philosophy. Like, and then they're very open people. So it's like, there can be a converging idea that Jordan talks to Sam about, and Sam's sitting there like listening to it with no judgment, like just taking it in, looking at it for himself. And then the same thing happens with Jordan. Like he'll be sitting there, like you can see he's, you know, he's not reacting. He's just like, okay. And then you can see him processing it for himself, and then he'll express something else, right? Like, and it's like you can just see mastery. Like you can just see two guys that have gone to the mats with themselves, you know, like they've really gone to the mat.
And
Yeah.
so in that process where the two are meeting each other and having this discussion, is it the individuals that are evolving and gaining new ideas, or is it the universe itself working out its own philosophy of itself?
Yeah. Heavy question, right? Because
It's both. Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
you
little
can,
bit of all that.
yeah, you can see it working through them, but then you can also, like, I also see the individual piece of it as well. Like
something bigger is taking place on an
yeah,
individual level, yeah, but on a bigger plane, like ideas themselves are evolving through people.
yeah, I definitely get the, like, I definitely get the sense that there's a bigger game. Like there's a bigger game, there's something bigger there, but that they're playing the game within the game. Like, and and Jordan talked about this, but he was saying like anybody that can play in their life, like that's mastery. Like a human being that can play, and like you can just see them playing. It's like it's like a bunch of guys like at the card table watching a football game, but they're talking about philosophical and like these, you know, these really, for most people, in-depth technical sort of ideas. And but like they're just like shooting the shit with each other, like playing, but they're not on guard. They're not like defending anything. They're not trying to make someone see it a certain way. They're like accepting because they're okay in themselves. It's great. It was a great episode. It was just awesome to watch. I don't remember half of what they talked about. I was just enamored with their presentation, like their states of being.
Mm.
Does God evolve